Hello, I'm Chrissy Janiga. I am an author, social worker, and mindset and alcohol-free coach. This is a video in a series that really accompanies my 2 weeks free of alcohol PDF. So you can grab that below. And I'm going to talk about in this video today a little bit of the science, but I'm also going to link some books below, and there's podcasts you can listen to. I would highly recommend doing your research on alcohol, because when we start to kind of identify why we're drinking, why we want to stop drinking, a lot of it kind of makes a lot of sense. And then we can start debunking myths like alcohol helps me to sleep. And we know now the science says it doesn't. And so I want to just talk a little bit again about what happens when we drink. So when we drink alcohol, it releases a massive amount of dopamine. This is not natural. And really, if you look at like heroin also distributes a lot of dopamine. Alcohol maybe not as much, but when you think about it that way, kind of makes it sound a little bad, right? So it releases this unnatural amount of dopamine, which really slows down and numbs our central nervous system. Now, our body always wants to be in homeostasis. It wants to always feel really good. So it recognizes alcohol for what it is. It's a toxin. So it wants to get rid of it. So what also happens is it releases cortisol. So the stress hormone, which we don't like the stress hormone. When we look at hormones and we look at everything else, it really, can really lead to a lot of inflammation. It also releases adrenaline, so that excited, that as well. And then also releases dynorphin, which is just kind of that low feeling. And studies have shown that suicidal patients have have higher levels of dynorphin. So if alcohol releases that, it's a little bit scary, which makes sense why people feel depressed. Now, this took me really a long time to really actually feel and figure out. I think a lot of times when people first stop drinking, they don't really notice it. And I think a lot of times we keep drinking over and over again, and we once a 20-minute buzz wears off, we drink again and we keep drinking. And I didn't notice the actual depressant effects of alcohol until I had actually one small glass of wine. I took a really long break from drinking, had a small glass of wine, and then I felt awful. I felt awful about maybe an hour or so later. I felt really depressed and down, and I'm like, it's the alcohol. And so again, what happens is we have this cocktail of chemicals, and it can be really, really hard to deal with. And we don't sometimes know that until we take a break. And it can take a while for these chemicals to actually get out of our system. And so when we look at our sleep, for example, all this is happening, and it puts us in this sedative state, right? How many people have said, hey, I passed out? And so what happens is it really affects our REM cycles. Even the smallest amount of drinking will take our REM cycles from 5 to 7 to 1 to 2. What does that mean? You don't get restorative sleep like you would normally do if you didn't drink. And again, oftentimes, let's say somebody drinks 1 to 2 drinks every day, it can take a good amount of time for the chemicals to get out of your system. So when people tell me, I feel like crap now that I'm not drinking, that's because you still have the chemicals in your body. Keep in mind you have these uppers and downers. And so you have all these emotions. And again, alcohol produces the stress hormone. So the day after, you might feel down and anxious, and you didn't get really good sleep. And I don't know about you, but I would wake up at 3 once the alcohol was out of my system, feeling awful, just awful. And I think that there's this belief that a lot of people think that alcohol helps you sleep. And really, it sedates you and destroys your sleep. And then you feel really bad the next day because you're stressed. And again, what we do is we attribute it to something else. We don't attribute it to alcohol. We put alcohol on this really high shelf that it can't be the alcohol. But again, if we don't give our bodies time to adjust, sometimes it can take a little bit for the alcohol to get out of our system. So that's why some people are just assume that alcohol helps because they haven't given their time or their body enough time to adjust. Now, what if you're a weekend drinker? Well, it might take you, and keep in mind, alcohol stays in your body the older we are, which is probably why people have the hangovers they do, and they feel much worse as we get older. But if you binge drink the whole weekend, it might take you 2 to 3 days for this chemicals to get out, as well as far as to feel the normal feeling. Now, again, it could take you more time to have all the chemicals get out of your body. So it's really important to kind of give yourself that space to do that. And it's been noted that alcohol is the 5th most addictive drug in the world. And when you look at it that way, it is crazy. And I also wanted to highlight one other thing, that when we have artificial dopamine and when we do this, when we drink over and over again, our body sees this alcohol, or our brains, as, oh, this is safe, this is good, we need this to survive. And so really, we create this addictive habit that is very hard sometimes to stop in the beginning because we crave it. And when we have a habit, so you have a trigger, let's say you have a really, really rough, stressful day, and you decided, I'm going to drink alcohol. You drink a glass of wine, and it just depresses the central nervous system. It does make us feel relaxed short term. Again, it's not a long-term thing. And so it numbs us, and then it's addictive. Our brains see it as a survival method. But what happens is dopamine from other wonderful things that we do in our lives, hang out with your family, going for a bike ride, they produce obviously normal levels of dopamine. So what can happen is when we do other things, and I've heard this before, people don't find as much joy in the things they used to find because of this artificial massive release of dopamine that your brain expects. And so I think it's so important to take a break and experience the wonderful things in life. I also wanted you to know too that it decreases serotonin. So again, another happy chemical. And so when you look at this, when people say, I don't know if it's the drinking that's causing my anxiety and depression, I think a couple of things is, keep in mind, I'm not a medical doctor or psychiatrist. And so I definitely recommend you seeing somebody if you do want to, get help, of course. But the other thing is really taking an actual break from drinking, like a legitimate break, and paying attention to what's going on in your brain. Because just because we remove alcohol, and I do feel like people's things, like certain parts of their lives do get better, doesn't mean that we don't have to work on our mindset and other parts of our body. Because when we, drink, sometimes it gets planted in our subconscious, some of the things that we do. So it's not just about a beverage. If it was just about a beverage, everyone would quit. But again, I encourage you to read more and learn more. I'm going to talk also about some different health, benefits of stopping, and also some of the effects that alcohol can do to us in a different video. So thank you so much.